Hello internet, hello and welcome to this video. I want to talk about wages because it's been bugging me. It's really that simple. Now I do realize that I may be preaching to the choir here, but then again, I sometimes do get wages even from my chat channel, and honestly I just think it's something that needs to be addressed, and if it's just for the people outside of our community, so bear with me. I've never really played MOBAs on my own, it's just not something I do, but recently I've been loving Dota 2 just so much that even if I couldn't get a full group together, I still joined the game. And I noticed that, well, there's a surprising amount of rages going on. Well, not really surprising amounts, because I know that this community has got a lot of rages. And eventually it got to a point where I am like, well, I just kind of want to talk about it, because I don't get rages. And let me explain why. Now, something we have to establish first is, why are these people raging? And I think the answer to that is pretty simple. These players want to win. These players want to win the game. And they feel like somebody in their team is restricting them. And as a result of that, they get mad, they get frustrated, and it feels like it isn't in their hands. Which I guess that's just a downside to a team game. I want to compare this to a real life scenario. Let's just say you're playing a game of soccer, or playing a game of volleyball, I guess. Just a team sport. Now, somebody on your team isn't playing as well as you want them to play. Exact same scenario, right? You are trying to carry the game, but somebody on your team is just holding you back, and that's why you're losing. Which is very much possible in volleyball. I'm not sure about soccer, but very much possible in volleyball. Now, what do you do? What is your reaction to that? Do you walk up to him, punch him in the face, shout at him, make him cry, make him hate you, insult everything about him, insult his family, insult everything he loves and everything he stands for? Or do you walk up to him and are like, dude, we know you're not playing too well, but man up, calm down, we can do this. Don't you try to encourage him? Don't you try to calm him down and actually get his mind back on the game? Isn't raging at him the entirely wrong way to go about this? Because if you insult him, like hell he's gonna try to play better. Why would he do that? For you? Certainly not. But what if he just isn't good? What if he's actually bad and that is the problem? What if he was thrown into a game where he's surrounded by players of a different caliber and he just can't keep up? Do you really think raging at him will make him become a better player? No. In that scenario, that player still needs help. That player still needs you to help him out, because most likely he realizes that he can't keep up with these other guys, and in that scenario that player is most likely willing to help. So just giving him some advice on how to improve, just giving him some tips on how he can keep up with those players and how he cannot be a burden to your team, is yet again a much more appropriate way to respond to a bad player. But what if the bad player is the problem? What if the bad player is actually the one raging? Well, in that scenario that leads us to a nice effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is a bit of psychology thrown in here, but I think it's rather interesting. So, let's actually just read what Wikipedia says about this. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which unskilled individuals suffer from illusory superiority, mistakenly rating their ability much higher than average. This bias is attributed to a metacognitive inability of the unskilled to recognize their mistakes. Dunning and Kruger proposed that, for a given skill, incompetent people will: first, tend to overestimate their own level of skill; second, fail to recognize genuine skill in others; third, fail to recognize the extremity of their inadequacy; and fourth, recognize and acknowledge their own previous lack of skill if they are exposed to training for that skill. So bitches, I just dropped some science on your ass. It basically means that the only way to deal with somebody that is acting according to the Dunning-Kruger effect, a bad player that fails to recognize their own lack of skill, is to give them the training necessary so they can realize what they are doing wrong and actually recognize their lack of skill. Otherwise, they will be stuck in that cycle of Dunning-Kruger effect and never get out of it. Now, the problem with this is, of course, that somebody that is acting according to the Dunning-Kruger effect will not recognize you as a better player, and as a result of that will not listen to your advice. The only way to go around that is for you to actively show what they are doing wrong. If you are looking to educate that player and actually properly deal with such a player in your team, such a rager even, is to go ahead and show them in detail what they are doing wrong. Once you do that, they will snap out of that Dunning-Kruger effect, and you will now be able to properly deal with them on the same level as you should be able to deal with any reasonable human being. In the end, I don't get ragers because everything they do is counterintuitive and counterproductive towards the goal they are actually trying to achieve, which is winning the game. And I just think that's so weird, and I just had to talk about that. But there's also one other thing I want to talk about, and that is the thought of Russians ruining your games. I'm gonna be really harsh right here, but deal with it, because that's just what my opinion is. But everybody that is like, oh my god, Russians are such a pest in this game and such a problem, and they should be excluded from the client, get their own servers and only be allowed to play on those. All of you would have been great Nazis, and this is coming from a German guy. There is no such thing as a Russian problem. They are a scapegoat, and people are making them out to be much worse than they actually are. I have heard such ridiculous statements as Russians are bad at this game, Russians always refuse to communicate. That's just freaking retarded. First of all, some of the best teams in the world are Russian. Some of the best players in the world are Russian. You cannot project the bad example of one person onto an entire population. The whole "OMG, Russians are ruining this game" is nothing but a vicious circle. You want to believe that Russians are ruining the game, so every single time a Russian ruins your game, which I'm not going to deny, it happens. But every single time that happens, you will remember it. However, every single time a Russian does not ruin your game, you won't even realize that that person was Russian. And now think about this. Is it really just the Russians? Because I've had games ruined by everybody. Germans, French, Italians, Spanish people, Polish people, it doesn't matter. Anybody. The only reasons why Russians stick out is because they use Cyrillic letters. It's just much easier to make out if somebody is Russian than to make out if they are anything else. Honestly, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous, and everybody that is calling on Russians ruining this game should maybe rethink their values and morals, because there's something terribly wrong with your brain. In the end, you're nothing more but a racist. Well, not exactly a racist, because Russian is not a race, but I don't know, Russianist, whatever. You get the point. You get the point. They could be doing anything, you would still be hating them for that. And I am sorry, but an unconditional hate is always wrong. It's always wrong. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating on the video. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And, well, see you tomorrow. Bye.